Rabbi Schmelkin, we are honored to have you here today for this inaugural event, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
If you could please give us a short recap of the events that occurred, which led the Charlottesville community to build relationships with each other, that would be great.
Yes, so I'm part of a group here in Charlottesville called the Charlottesville Clergy Collective. That group was started before I ever arrived in Charlottesville in the wake of the horrible, horrible shooting in Charleston at the Black AME Church. And after that happened, Dr. Alvin Edwards, who's the reverend at one of the major churches here in Charlottesville, felt like our community didn't have, our faith community and the clergy didn't necessarily have strong relationships with each other where they had already built trust. And so he formed that group in the wake of that shooting in case, God forbid, anything ever happened here in Charlottesville that would be a reason for us to need to come together. And sadly, it did.
Okay. And how has this effort to build relationships in Charlottesville impacted you and the rest of the Charlottesville community?
So I think that when we started getting word here in Charlottesville of the KKK coming in July and the alt-right coming in August, we already had a group that was fairly close and really trusted each other. And so that enabled us to meet and talk about this. We already had meetings on the calendar. So we really were able to get together and start moving right away on a plan in how we would support our community and how we would help them because we already knew each other.
And some of you took shelter in other places of worship, is that correct?
Yeah, so on August 11th and 12th, there was a church, First United Methodist Church, that made itself a safe space, a safe haven for people in different faith communities, for activists that had come into town to protest against the alt-right. And, you know, there were many of us there to provide pastoral care, to sing songs of hope, to pray with people. And many members of the Jewish community in particular went over to the church from our synagogue that morning.
Rabbi, you gave a great example of how the faith clergy came together that weekend. Can you give an example of how the community at large came together as well?
Yeah, so I can give you a couple specific examples. One is that after August 12th, our congregation had Shabbat services, our Friday night Sabbath service, and we noticed that lots of people from the community, sure, lots of Jews came, but also non-Jews came to our services that weekend and the weekend after to stand in solidarity with us. Another example that is really poignant is that I was at the synagogue on October 6th or 7th, I believe, leading a Sukkot program with young adults in their 20s and 30s. Sukkot is a holiday of festivity and celebration in Judaism where we dwell outside in these outdoor booth kind of tent things. And I was there with these young adults when the Nazis came back in their second torchlit rally. I was, of course, alerted by my interfaith clergy group that they were in the park just a few blocks away from us. But I also, within minutes, one of my young adults came over to me and they were like, there's somebody here for you. And it was just a local activist from the community who had gone to the park when she heard that the Nazis were there and then thought about it herself. Maybe there are people at the synagogue, I should go and alert them. And so she came to me on her own accord and said, they're in the park, they're really close to you. What can we do to help? Can I call other people to come? And a group of interfaith clergy, as well as non-clergy, but people of faith, even people I don't know if they're of faith or not, but were just involved in standing up to hatred. They came and they stood outside of our synagogue for the duration of the program and then accompanied people back to their cars because none of us knew, even after the Nazis left the park, if they were around, if they were in town. And so that was a huge moment of community protection and set an example. And I know that if, God forbid, they were to come back and they were near the mosque or they were near an African-American church, our Jewish community and the rest of the community would do the same thing. We would show up and we would stand outside and protect them too.
And as we here in this area, we embark on building relationships in our community, what advice or suggestions do you have for us?
I think it's really important to start right now. Build relationships with each other, do things together, but I think that it all starts with really getting to know one another. I think some of that work was done in the Charlottesville Clergy Collective before I moved here, before I was a part of it. But really get to know each other, really be relational with each other, learn about each other's different ideologies and faiths, support each other, visit each other's congregations. And I think also know that you won't always see eye to eye on everything. It may mean forming alliances with groups that sometimes say things that you don't agree with, or in the case of the Jewish community, we've formed alliances with groups that sometimes think differently about Israel than we do. And that's been really important, to not write each other off.
Thank you, Rabbi Schmelkin, for sharing your experiences and your words of wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.